Hey everyone, my name's Dean Gravina. Really excited to be here with Mike Rhodes. For those who don't actually know Mike, he's actually been voted in the top 20 PPC Influencers in 2024.
My mum voted.
She voted. Obviously, you were the owner of Web Savvy and Agency Savvy for 16 years.
Yep.
Author of the world's best-selling book on Google Ads.
Co-author.
Co-author.
I'll give Perry some credit.
Yep.
Yep.
And the inventor and pioneer of the Rhodes PMax script.
That's a nice ring to it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So just some topics for today that we're going to be covering. So as we start off, all about Mike. So a bit of Mike's background, entrepreneurship and learning. I know Mike's got some really good resources on learning fast and entrepreneurship.
Yep.
A little bit about Web Savvy. Also a little bit about the guide into Google Ads, and we'll obviously talk about the PMax script as well.
All right.
So looking forward to that. Just to kick it off, Mike, you can go as far back as you like. How did it all sort of start?
Well, my first love was helicopters. I saw this TV program when I was 6.
Yep.
And I went, Mum, that's what I want to do.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes, dear. Okay. And then when I was 20, I learned to fly. I actually flew a plane before I drove a car. But I spoke to a mate of my parents when I was 16. And he said, what's important to you? And I said, well, I don't have one yet, but I know it's going to be my family. And he said, don't become a pilot. Why is that? Because you spend more than half the month on the road away. Yes, you only work 15, 16 days a month or whatever it is, but you don't see your family.
Yep.
And being an airline pilot is apparently hours and hours of boredom with the odd moment of sheer terror. I went, yeah, that doesn't sound like a great job. But I had my first job was working for a helicopter company in the UK. And it was really, I guess, through that I had decided, yeah, being a posh taxi driver doesn't appeal. That's how all the guys talked about themselves as drivers. I went, I want to be the guy sitting in the back, drinking the champagne, getting flown around everywhere. That seems way more fun than sitting up the front with a nicely ironed shirt, doing this all day. So I decided, leave England. Emigrated
So
at that point.
There?
Grew up in the UK.
And when was all this happening? How old? Like around?
Like mid-20s.
Mid-20s?
Yeah.
Yep.
So I left England when I was 28, went to New Zealand for 3 weeks, stayed for 3 years, started my first business there, and then moved to Australia after 3 years there.
That's perfect. And so did you do any sort of studying in like what I'm trying to figure out is you've come up with all these great ideas and these great businesses and everything that you've been posting is amazing. Like what sort of contributed to that, especially in the early days of yourself?
So it's really hard to self-analyze that. Before we jumped on camera, I was saying I had this saying given to me many years ago: obvious to you, amazing to others. And to me, it's just kind of obvious that if you want to do this and this and they fit together, that you end up doing this thing. And it's just like business was obvious to me. I dropped out of my first degree, which was kind of rocket science, I guess, in a way. It was aeronautical engineering and design. So like designing plane engines and cars and stuff. And I dropped out of that because it was way too much work and there wasn't enough design in there. And in the process of dropping out, I sat in on a friend's business degree. And they're asking questions like, when's a good time to order new stock? I'm like, just before you run out of old stock. Yes, gold star. Well, it just seemed really obvious. A business just appealed. And then my degree became business with computer science. So I guess I've had that early exposure to programming and stuff, which just teaches you a way. I think it's really, really important for people to learn that today, because it just teaches you a way of thinking, of breaking problems down into smaller pieces and attacking each piece, and that there is a solution if you just keep trying hard enough. So that's just always been built in, I guess.
I find that really fascinating. So, surely there was maybe a couple of people that influenced you, or did you just have it?
I'm sure, yeah, absolutely. My maths teacher, Mrs. Kiss, when I was in school, I wrote to her a few years ago and just said, you won't remember me. And she said, yes, I do. My dad worked for Xerox, so we had computers at home from the very, very, very early days, the ZX81, Spectrum, Commodores, all those things. So I learned programming pretty early. I've had some amazing teachers along the journey and been very, very lucky.
Yeah, for sure. That's really, really interesting. So I guess it all really started in terms of your journey quite early on in your 20s. It's always, you said obviously another success story of a high school dropout, a uni dropout.
Well, I dropped out of my first one. I went back to uni, to a second uni. And
is that a lot further on? Or
no, next year.
The next year?
Yeah, I took a few months off, worked,
yeah.
Spent the summer in Canada.
Perfect.
Legally, I might add. And then, yeah, came back and started a new 3-year degree.
Okay.
Which I've never used, really.
Yep.
But anyway.
Definitely. And was there a particular moment that you realized? Was there a particular, like, for a lot of people, they say there was a particular moment that something happened that you knew was going to be business marketing?
There's not really a moment. There's a story I can tell you there that I can try and make short. I think when I was a kid, my dad, and I've chatted to him since about this, I'm not having a go at your dad, but like he commuted an hour and a half each way every day. So he wasn't around a lot when I was a teenager. And I think I decided pretty early on, probably 9 or 10, that I don't want to do that. And I've never commuted in my life. And I'm sure that played a big part of that.
Part of it.
But the helicopter thing was when I was pretty old as far as pilots go, 25. One of our pilots got me a meeting with the head of the Army Air Corps in England. I remember him to this day, Major Ingram, lovely guy, 3,000 soldiers under his command, and he gave me an hour and a half of his time. And we sat there, and at the end of it, he said, mate, there is a spot in my army if you want it, but we both know it's not for you. And I went and sat in my car in the car park in Middle Wallop and bawled my eyes out for half an hour because I knew I was never going to fly the fun stuff. I was never going to fly Apaches and Cobras and the cool stuff. And I knew at that point I was not going to be a helicopter pilot for the rest of my life. And that was probably the moment when I decided that, yes, having my own business was going to happen sooner rather than later. But I kind of always knew I'd have my own business, but I wouldn't recommend it to anybody like straight out of school or straight out of uni. I think going and getting a job and being part of the workforce for a little bit first, and hopefully for a good boss, although I've had some shitty ones too. That teaches you a lot. It teaches you a lot about how you want to be a boss and how you want to manage people and not manage people. And you don't really, I think it's pretty rare that you know enough coming into it straight out of school.
For sure. I think a big thing for me is that you always look back into your early childhood, your uni days, your high school days, and you don't realize it until later, but there's particular things, conversations that you have with people and thoughts that go at the back of your mind that you sort of think about, well, how did I end up here today?
And teachers, like if I didn't have this amazing maths teacher, Mrs. Kiss, I loved maths because of that. And so I always just gravitated to maths and physics and number stuff. I'm terrible with words. I can't spell for shit. I can't learn languages. But numbers make sense to me. And so that totally shaped everything that I did after that.
That's perfect. That's amazing. And I guess I haven't watched your whole, I know you've got some, different courses and different scripts. What sort of really stood out to me was in your course, you've got a whole module on mindset, how to learn very quickly. And it's all about entrepreneurship, learning quickly. There were a couple of different things that you spoke about, the 80-10 rule, the DIS method. I guess for me, the 80-20 rule is, I know you speak about that as well. That's one that always sticks with me. But is there a particular rule that sticks out to you a little bit more across your journey that you've really stuck by? For me, it's been the 80-20 rule.
80-20 is everywhere. And like people don't realize almost it's a law almost, not a rule, right? So you wear 20% of your clothes 80% of the time. You go into 20% of the rooms in your house 80% of the time. You drive on 20% of the streets 80% of the time. It's just everywhere. 20% of your clients bring in 80% of your profits.
Exactly.
Generally speaking.
Yeah.
So 10-80-10 was, I guess, my twist on that, which was more around delegating. Because I was a terrible delegator. I used to be a micromanager for sure. Sorry to the old team. So 10-80-10 is a way of delegating better.
Yeah.
So probably inspired by Tim Ferriss, who'll come up when we talk about DIS. But He wrote a book, as many people know, 4 Hour Work Week,
Yes,
which many people
read that.
get confused about what that really means. But a lot of that was about outsourcing. You have focus on what you're really good at, what Dan Sullivan calls your unique genius.
Yeah, yeah.
If you just focus on your unique genius,
Yep.
you will be much, much happier. You'll be way more productive. You'll get more done. You'll probably be more successful, whatever success means to you. But in order to do that, you've got to get rid of the 80%, the stuff that you do because you have to, the stuff that you do that you're not very good at, the stuff that you just really don't enjoy. It doesn't motivate and fascinate you like we were talking about before. And so imagine you've got a task, could be the whole project, could be a single task. Whatever time that would normally take you to do, call that 100%. And instead of doing that, spend 10% of that time delegating really well. So essentially describing what this thing looks like when it's done and done well. What are the success criteria? How does somebody else know when they've done it as well as you could do it? And it doesn't start off as 10, 80, 10. It probably starts off as 30, 20, 50 or something like that, right? The goal is to get to 10, 80, 10, where the 10% at the beginning is describing and delegating well. The 80% in the middle is somebody else doing what you used to do. And when people do that, when they outsource, what they tend to do is they get the thing back. They get the big red pen out and they go, wrong, 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 bloody hell, this would have been easier to do myself.
If you did it.
If I had done it, it would have been done faster, because it takes time to teach someone else to do it. But if you invest that time, which is the final 10%, that's the feedback, that's the mentoring, that's the coaching, that's describing to somebody else how to do it better so that the next time they do it a bit better, and then a bit better, and a bit better. And okay, maybe they're never going to be as good as you at it, but if they could do it even 80% as well as you could do it, and now you can start getting rid of all these things from your plate, you are now freed up to do the stuff that you love to do. And yeah, okay, maybe things still need a little correction here and there, but you know what? Most of us are such perfectionists that if something is done at 80% of the level that we would have done it, most of the time that's good enough anyway.
Do you know why I love this conversation? Because you can apply this to anything. You can apply this to a Google ad specialist.
Yeah.
You can apply this to the CEO of Optimise.
Yeah.
Right? Whatever you want to apply it to. And especially, you know, if you look at this on in two different aspects, you know, obviously people that are potentially working in a company as a strategist, and they're in the weeds, they're doing all the work, but they could actually, they might have a smaller team under them, or parts that they can outsource. I find that a lot of people, sometimes they need to really consider these rules.
So we had a conversation in my old agency 10 years ago of what if everybody had a VA? You know, VAs in the Philippines, they were very, very popular back then. I remember one of my team coming to me and saying, like, can I have a VA? And I'm like, well, what would you do differently if you had one? And she showed me. I'm like, yeah, absolutely you can have a VA, because she's going to be twice as effective, and it's going to cost me 20% more. It just made total sense. So yeah, the more that you can get off your plate, and you need to be a bit self-aware to do that, right? There's a whole process that we could go through if we have more time of how to do that, which is in one of those courses somewhere. But essentially, yeah, just figure out what you want to spend your time doing and get everything else off your plate over time. Yeah,
because I guess as individuals, whether you're a business owner, whether you're in a company, you've really got to figure out what are the needle moving activities.
Where do you add value? Where do you add value that nobody else can?
For sure.
Right? So maybe you're really good at writing ads, but loads of people are really good at writing ads. So there's no moat around that. It's not defensible. Maybe you love it, and maybe you want to spend your whole life doing it. Great. Figure out what your special thing is about that, and how are you going to do it such that nobody else can do it? How do you become what Seth Godin calls, how do you be the best in the world at what you do? Now, that doesn't mean the best in the entire world. It means the best in your world. Be the best in Melbourne, if that's where your clients are, or in Australia, or in legal businesses that look after Cocker Spaniels. Like, whatever your world is, be the best in that world, and then you're going to stand out.
That's perfect. And do you want to touch on
DIS?
On DIS a little bit?
DIS comes from Tim Ferriss again. So there's a book he wrote called The 4-Hour Chef, which is a book about learning disguised as a cookbook. So DIS, the I is meaningless, it just makes it a better acronym. Deconstruction, selection.
That's
Look at
right.
me, there's another S in there. Selection and sequence,
Yes.
and then stakes.
Yes.
So the first three are on me as a teacher to get right.
Yes.
The last one is on you as a student. So deconstruction, basically, what are all the Lego pieces that go into, say, Google Ads? When I read his book, I had loads of Google Ads courses back then, and I was like, oh, this is a much better way to teach it, where people are going to get it much quicker. What are all the Lego pieces that go into a Google Ads account? Ads, keywords, ad groups, all of that. And then the selection, what are the 20% that people really need to understand to get it quickly? So you can't teach them absolutely everything, right? There's 158 metrics inside of a Google Ads account. You can't teach beginners all of that straight away. But what's the bit that really matters? And then sequence, how do you teach that in the right order, or how do you learn that in the right order where it's going to be really impactful, which is like going through a video game from level 1 to level 2 to level 3. And then stakes, that's on you as the student to make sure that you implement something like what's at stake here. What are you going to do to learn faster? Because you learn faster when there's something at stake.
At stake.
So that's DISS.
You know, that I really love these conversations, and I think, yeah, obviously the resources that you have, that's why we're obviously talking about this, because it's just amazing the stuff that you presented. We're gonna take a quick break, and we're gonna segue into the next section. Getting into the next part of this recording, I'd love to really reflect on your learnings about the 10-80-10 rule, the DISC method, how you've actually applied that to when you were running Web Savvy, Agency Savvy. Were there any particular examples where you actually you came to the realization that, hey, I need a better way to do something?
Yeah, so I guess there's probably one for each, really. So 10-80-10 is probably more applicable to Web Savvy. So Web Savvy was the done-for-you agency. So I discovered Google Ads. I was basically incredibly lucky. I was in the right place at the right time. I got really, really lucky with hiring.
Yep.
Most of the people that I hired at the start of the agency were with me for 7-8 years, which makes life much, much easier. And I wandered off to run somebody else's business for a couple of years in between. So I discovered that 2004, ran someone else's business for a couple of years, and then started the agency 2006. The business that I went to run was basically an event management and public speaking business that I did to get practice public speaking. But it turned out that the clients basically of that business were small Australian businesses that were advertising on radio, but not big enough to have an advertising agency. Like the perfect market that I could have started with. One of them, who's based over there, was spending $1 million a year on radio and had never spent a cent online, because this is 2006. And the very, very first month, we spent $5,000 on a quick little Google Ads campaign for him, and it got him as much business as his radio spend was getting him.
That's incredible.
And all these people started to go, oh shit, we need to know more about this. And I was always like, well, I'm here as the guest of the radio company. I had to be very, very radio friendly, but the digital guy being very radio friendly. But it got me some incredible meetings with CEOs and marketing managers of some amazing Aussie businesses, some of whom are still clients of the agency today, which makes me like the most proud that 16 years on, they're still clients.
Yeah, if we take it a little bit, because I know we sort of fast forwarded there, if we take it a little bit a step back, so Web Savvy came first?
Web Savvy came first, but what I've discovered is that I'm a teacher at heart. And so my MO has always been, when I find something I think is really interesting and that small businesses would benefit from, I want to teach that. And so Agency Savvy came along pretty quickly, maybe 2008. I created my first, you remember those courses you got with DVDs in a big bubble wrap container? Yeah, I created my first one of those. I still have one somewhere. Ran it in town, in the city, packaged it all up, found somebody to make 500 of these things and sold them online. And that led to conversation with Perry Marshall and his team, which led to the book. And my experience with the book was that pretty much as soon as it was on the shelves, there were big chunks of it that were out of date. And that really bothered me, because people were going to read this book and then do the wrong thing or do something that was a year old, because books are very, very slow to get published. And so that's when I really sort of kicked Agency Savvy off into a higher gear of I wanted it to be the most up-to-date training on Google Ads that was out there. And yeah, did that for 15 odd years as well.
Up to date in the marketing world.
Yeah.
I mean, we're out of date already.
It moves fairly fast. Yeah, it was a bit of a fool's errand trying to keep those courses up to date. People would send lovely emails and say like, the UI's changed and that button's not there anymore, and this course is old. It's like, well, that's 6 months ago. So yeah, we will update it. But for the most part, I did try and make those courses very more strategic than tactical. So it wasn't about which button to press in the UI and step by step how to build an ad group, but more how to think about Google Ads and how to use that, whether you're a brand or an agency or a freelancer.
Gotcha. And I mean, that's agency savvy. It's also about the community as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think also another thing is you can watch these courses, but what you also need to realize is that it's the community that you're going to be doing a lot of learning from as well.
You want to be around like-minded people and learn as much from them as yourself. Like so many times we would do Q&A webinars or something, and people would say, I've learned more from listening to other people's questions and how you answer those than say the course content. And I would learn a lot about what content to create from people's questions, because rather than just answer a question one-on-one and then that content goes to die somewhere, great, let's create a whole module around answering that question. And questions like that, and then that lives on and way more people get the benefit of somebody asking that question. So yeah, agency savvy was probably it was the forgotten child always. I mean, it was always like 7-8% of total revenue. Web savvy was the engine. That was, I suppose, the day job, but agency savvy was probably the first love.
First love, yeah. I guess in terms of web savvy, when was PMax was around that time, or no?
PMax is a good couple of years old now. I sold the agency about 8 months ago. So yeah, the team there obviously still use it on a bunch of accounts, but I mean, it's not like that's the first tool I've created for the PPC community. I've been doing that for 15 years as well, creating tools like the display grid and the remarketing grid, profit curve. There are a whole bunch of them that I would create or maybe present at traffic and conversion in the States or something like that, and usually give away for free or as a way of selling courses sometimes.
Well, maybe we can touch on that. For me, it's the PMax script that has really been shared around the community. What was the first real resource? I mean, you've obviously figured out that you building these resources, these scripts, these extra tracking tools and things like that, that's really useful for agency owners, people within agencies, freelancers, individuals. You might be in-house at a company. When was your first, or what was your first actual script that really sort of, besides the PMax one, what was?
Oh, that's probably the first script that I've really sort of pushed. But yeah, I've been building tools and giving tools away for a long time, and obviously that's tied in with the courses and the book, and it's all about, I guess, teaching those ideas or sharing those ideas. But the script really took off, I think, because everybody was frustrated with PMax and how opaque the reporting is around that. It's almost like Google go out of their way to make it difficult. And we figured out some things internally. Stacey at Web Savvy is a pretty amazing person to brainstorm with and bounce ideas around. And we figured out fairly early on that we could work out how much of your performance. So the problem with, let me take a step back. The problem with Performance Max is your ads show everywhere, 7 different networks, and Google don't really break any of that down because AI, because us stupid little humans can't make sense of all of that data. So they don't want really us to have the data because there's no action that you can take. That's how a Google engineer, I think, would think about it. If you can't take action, then what's the point in having the data? And so they don't give you the data. And we figured out fairly quickly that we could work out how much you were spending on YouTube by looking at the number of views and the cost per view, multiply that together, now you know how much you spent on video. But those columns would be hidden in your Google Ads account if you weren't running any video campaigns, because you don't need those campaigns if you're not running video campaigns. But with the script, all of that data is freely available from the API.
Yes.
So when I figured that out, I'm like, oh, we don't have to create dummy YouTube campaigns in every account anymore in order to get this data. We can use a script to pull that.
Yes.
And then the second part was the shopping component. So most of PMax, it was kind of originally a replacement for smart shopping. So most of the ads that show are shopping ads.
Yes.
And if you go into the interface, you will find loads and loads of lines of data in a report that you can't export, that you can't download, and you can't even just sum up all of the numbers in a column because a lot of it's duplicates.
Yep.
But again, if you pull that from the script and you massage it a little bit, you can work out now how much you're spending on shopping.
Well, the thing is, for me, I had to wait. Give me a sec. Chop it here.
No worries. Thank you, sound guy. That might be more detail than you want, but
That was good. That was excellent. Yes, as I was saying, the thing is for me, when I was actually running a search campaign and a PMax campaign for a friend, I had the exact same issue. You know, and someone like me, obviously, I'm not a Google Ads specialist. I was helping a friend out. I know the basics of setting up a search campaign, and I know how to get in and around the PMax setup. But there were two things. Where do I click? And this is too hard to visualize.
Right.
For me.
We are visual creatures, right? And so I think that was why it really took off, was not only taking that data and giving people the data, the numbers, but what I've really focused on with my scripts is how do you automate turning data into information? Because that's the first step, right? You got to go data to information. Once you have information, then you can have an insight.
Yep.
And then you can do the stuff that clients want, which is make that actionable and change stuff within the business. That's what clients really want, is what's the expected business outcome of taking this action. But in order to take action, you've got to have some idea which comes from looking at information, which comes from raw data.
Sure. Yeah.
And so that is what I've really focused on for the past little while, is automating that, because I see so many people, they go into the interface, download some report, drop it into Excel, delete the top 2 lines, change all of those things, tidy that up. And it's just such a waste of time in this day and age to do all of that manually. What you want to do is when, I'm working on this today, and you sit down and all of that information is presented to you, ready to go.
And you know what to do next.
Well, it's time to insight, right? Because if I'm not fiddling around cleaning up all that data, I can sit down and bang, I can start adding value to my clients straight away. So let's automate all of that. So none of my scripts make changes to your account, because I didn't want to take that risk that people would use it incorrectly, or have a wrong setting and all of a sudden it's deleting things inside of an account. So all the action you take is manual, and that's on purpose. But it should massively speed up the time. And so to do that, that meant creating a bunch of visualizations. And I love data visualization, because that's how you get the insight. Oh, let's see the trend of this over time, or let's see that visually. Then,
for me, I like colors: red, orange, green. I think you've got a variation of that, which is not so good.
Yeah.
Meh.
Yeah.
What are the other two?
We got profitable, costly. So obviously green and red, and then flukes and meh.
Meh.
Zero conversions and zombies. So all of your products sit in one of those 6 buckets.
Yes. And this is a really, and I don't know how to ask you this or how you would even answer this, but what I find with Google Ads and some aspects of search engine optimization is I feel that we are making things more simple yourself to understand, but why do you think that this isn't inbuilt in the Google Ads platform?
I think it comes back to what we said before. If there's no obvious action, like you can't, for instance, say within Performance Max, don't show my ads on YouTube, or don't show my ads on 9 News and these different external websites. Google has total control over where your ads show, which is obviously a very strategic decision for them to do that. Again, I think from their point of view, they would say, we understand machine learning and we understand all of this data. The customer journey is non-linear. They don't come into the top of a funnel in awareness, and then you show them these ads to get them a little bit excited, and then you show them some more ads and they come back and buy. Like that funnel hasn't really existed for a very, very long time, if it ever did. Google came out with this great paper in 2020, The Messy Middle. It's a 98-page PDF. It's well worth a read, even though it is now 4 years old. It is still worth a read. But that's what they called it, the messy middle. They rebranded the funnel to basically say, you silly little humans, you can't make sense of this data, leave it to us.
Leave it to us.
But they'll take over control. Now, the cynics among us, hypothetically, might say, impressions max, or maximum profit, or something like that, not performance max. It was designed where Google had total control. Maybe hypothetically they had lots of impressions that were going unsold on YouTube or on other websites that they own and operate. Back to Google Finance and Gmail and those sorts of things. Mike Ryan from SMEC had a great chart the other day that showed the amount of impressions on Google owned and operated sites has increased massively just in this last quarter. So it's been very stable for a long time. PMax has become more of a steady thing now. A lot of advertisers are using it. And all of a sudden, impressions on Google's own stuff has spiked massively. What do you know, 2 weeks before the next earnings announcement to Wall Street. So I'm not saying those two are connected, but yeah.
No, I understand. I feel that way in terms of a couple of things. But I guess, the real thing is there's a lot of agencies that will sort of sit back, and that's okay. That's how it is. That's how it is. Yep, PMax. I mean, we can see this, we can see that. We don't need an extra spreadsheet. What would you say to agency owners, agency employees, freelancers, in-house people, or whoever's running a PMax? They might be watching this, and that people obviously might know you. People that are watching this, or there'll be a lot of people that might not know who you are and what this is all about. Has there been a particular outcome in certain industries, whether it be e-commerce or service-based, that your script has really enhanced and given people the particular insight that they needed?
So I love being useful. So I get messages almost daily now of like, this is awesome. I can't believe this script does this. There was one this morning, I think he said, this is brutal with my new Whisperer script. And I had to write back and go, that's a good thing, right? I love getting those messages. Maybe I love getting affirmation from strangers, I don't know. But I really, really like being useful and adding value. So I don't know if there's one particular thing, but I just love that people are getting value from it. That's why when I put it out there, I put it out for free. That's why the free version is still available. So that, I guess when you were saying that, I was reminded of a line that I used back in the day, 18 years ago, which was, I'm not in not the habit of, that's the wrong word, but I'm not in the business of trying to convince someone against their will. So I'm not going to try and convince anyone that's not using the PMax script to use the PMax script. If you want to sit back as an agency and just run PMax, and that's the way you run accounts, I'm not going to try and change your mind.
Sure.
But for those agencies that want that level of control, that level of insight, that really care about doing great client work, and most agencies are like that. There are a few that don't. I'm not going to talk to them. That's fine. But for those that do, that appreciate that extra level of insight and being able to, kind of peel the curtain back a little bit and get data that you just can't get in the Google Ads UI, then I figure those people will find me eventually and they'll end up using the script. Yeah. If they don't, they don't.
And how difficult is it to set up?
Oh, to set up, it's literally copy paste.
Yep.
You copy it from my website, you paste it inside your Google Ads account, you hit run.
And there's a free version.
Yeah.
Yep. And I'll definitely put the free version in the link.
And there's also like an AI add-on now as well, which I call my Whisperer script. I was just chatting to one of your team about that before we jumped in front of the camera.
Yes.
So that's freely available as well. I'll give you the link later. Yep. But that basically takes the data from the sheet. You've already created it, so no point creating it again, but then sends it together with a prompt to the AI to help sort of, not to replace the strategist, not to try and use AI to replace, but to augment the strategist, to help you brainstorm different ways of approaching that data, to come up with some insights that maybe you didn't notice, to give you some follow-up questions to ask of your data, just to help sort of kickstart that. I think a lot of senior people in the industry, like I said before, it's obvious to you, amazing to others, and it's really hard to teach often that sort of data analysis skill to someone that's just trying to learn the platform, and then I've got to also learn SEO, and I've got to learn meta, and there's so much to learn. And there's some amazing people in this industry that if they had more time, they would wander off and learn all that stuff. But nobody has more time. Everybody's running at 110%. So if something can give you half a dozen follow-up questions of like, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Go investigate that, dig into this. This looks a bit weird, dig into that. Just to take that off my plate. Again, 80-20, right? It's like, that's just that first 20% that gets you on your way. And to do that for the average cost of running that AI report, 1.2 cents. So why wouldn't you use it?
Why wouldn't you? For the last segment, AI agents, and we're actually going to relate this a little bit, about Google Ads, about SEO as well. We're going to give some SEO examples. Is it possible to relate it to the PMax script as well?
I mean, I could, but probably best to pick one and make it clearer.
Go for it.
So I think the next big thing is AI agents. A bunch of very, very smart AI people that I follow have talked about this recently. I've been mildly obsessed with this for about 1.5 years now. Yep. Essentially, an AI agent is something that will work autonomously and make decisions. So when I first got into AI 7-8 years ago, I was talking about it at Traffic and Conversion in the States. I came to the conclusion that most businesses don't need AI. What most businesses need is automation. Most businesses have a bunch of SaaS tools, but they've got Xero for accounting, say they've got ClickUp or Asana or some Monday for all of their tasks. They've got email somewhere, they've got a CRM, and all of these things are full of useful, and most people are taking information out of one and sticking it in another, taking information from here and sticking it in a spreadsheet, or taking it from an email and sticking it into accounting.
That one.
It's really manual, right? Yep. But APIs are just the glue that make all of those things talk to each other. I wrote a whole business plan for creating an automation agency about 5 years ago, and decided I really didn't want to do that because it bores me to tears.
Okay.
But if you've got that in your mind, so imagine now we're back to 10, 80, 10. The thing about 10, 80, 10 is it's fractal, right? So you're the boss. You've got your 10%, set the whole thing up. You hand that task off to a junior in your office, and they come back, and then you do the 10% at the end, which is the feedback and the coaching. Well, the junior can do the same thing. So she can take that 10% and then hand off the middle 80% of her work to maybe somebody on Upwork, let's just say. And then the 10% at the end, she can coach them and get them better. So now she is way more efficient and she can do way more work.
Yep.
Now, the guy on Upwork might be doing the same thing too. There's a 10, 80, 10 to his work. Maybe most of that middle bit of his work could be done by an API.
Sure. Okay.
Or a script, maybe, or a little bit of code.
Okay.
So automation is computers talking to computers. The huge difference now is we have AIs that can be very human-like in the way that they work. So they can make decisions in a very similar way that humans make decisions. So if you imagine 10, 80, 10, if you stack a bunch of tasks together, it sort of looks like human running off to a machine, doing some work, some sort of automation, moving data around or automating data into information, coming back to a human to make a decision, off to a machine to move some data around, coming back to a human. So let's tie this to SEO. To write a blog post, you might want to come up with an idea and you're a bit stuck as what to write with. So you go off to ChatGPT or your favorite large language model and you say, come up with 5 ideas for a blog post about airplanes flying overhead while you're trying to record. And it comes up with great ideas. Yep. And then it comes back to the human to figure out which one of these things am I going to write about? And you pick one, human in the loop.
Yes.
Okay, AI, I've got this great idea for a blog post, but I need help coming up with an outline that's going to grab people. It needs to be about 6-7 paragraphs long. It needs to be about 800 words, whatever your constraints are. Hand that off to the AI, because AI is brilliant at spitting out lots of sometimes crap, sometimes amazing ideas. You never want to take one of those ideas and run with it. You always want to tweak it a little bit, make it your own. But it's really good at low cost idea generation, because the best way, and very smart people have proven this, the best way to come up with good ideas is to have lots of bad ideas.
Yes.
And AI is really good at coming up with loads of ideas and getting you past that blank page problem. So, okay, go off to the AI, come up with 5 ideas for the outline for this blog post idea about the airplanes. And you don't like any of those, so you say, give me another 10. You push it to the edges, you ask it for unusual, and there's all kinds of ways that you can use it, but you eventually end up with an outline. Awesome. Now, you can sit down and write that post. Or you could ask a language model to do that for you. So here's my outline, write me 6 paragraphs, rewrite paragraph 4, rewrite paragraph 3. It's not quite right. Make it a bit more persuasive. That joke in paragraph 2 is terrible dad joke. Let's get rid of that. So you edit that and you go backwards and forwards, down to the machine and back to the human, down to the machine, back to the human. Where I think AI agents are going to change things, the automation layer just got easier for one, but that's computers talking to computers. And as soon as you say API to a non-developer, most people are going to curl up their toes and run away.
Oh, I mean, that's me right now.
Right.
API, I'm out of here.
But ChatGPT or Anthropic, they can help you write that API call. They can break it down. They can teach you like you're a 12-year-old and tell you exactly how to get this thing talking to this thing. So that just got a lot easier.
Yes.
But the key difference is that the language model can act as that human in the loop in a lot of cases and make the decision.
And that's the agent.
So the agent then becomes this thing that can do all of this work.
Yes.
So it isn't coming back to the slow human of, oh, I've got 3 meetings, I'll get back to that tomorrow. It's instant, make a good enough decision about the thing, and then hand off to the next like little bit of computer in the middle, right? So you've got your idea generator, agent, outline, agent, blog post writer, agent, maybe one that creates the image to go with the blog post, maybe one that stitches all of that together inside of WordPress, maybe one that schedules it, and maybe it goes back to your, I don't know much about SEO at all, but there's an SEO optimizing agent that takes that finished article and rewrites it slightly based on the main keyword that you say you want to optimize for.
For sure.
And then there's an editor at the end, and then maybe there's a fact checker at the end to make sure that this thing hasn't been hallucinating and making shit up.
Yes.
So you stitch all of these things together. Imagine if you had unlimited time to run your team, right? If you had 100 interns, what would you do with those 100 interns? You would have people rewrite stuff, not quite good enough, try again, try again. You'd have somebody else on your team score that blog post and say, give it a score out of 10. That's what I did with my latest PMax
no
Whisperer
sick days, no emotions, just
no
do
asking
this,
for a
do
pay
that.
rise, no holidays, just go, 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 go. And you can train it to talk in your tone of voice. So if you have brand guidelines for Megaphone, you could feed those in and say, write in this style. We like to do this, or these constraints. I think agents are massively undervalued at the moment, and they are going to be the future of AI, because at the moment, us humans are the glue that stitch all these pieces together, or you need a dev that knows Python, and code is the way to stitch these things together. But I think very, very soon, we're going to have amazing UIs that make this very visual, which is literally dragging and dropping and putting these Lego pieces together. I think so we went back to this as well. Let's bring that full circle. But that deconstruction, what are all of the Lego pieces? If you can think about your business, your agency, the tasks that you do as a bunch of Lego pieces. What are all the tasks that I do?
Yes.
And I would recommend that everybody do some sort of task audit. I like to score it on, this is probably more than you want now, but score it on 2 axes. How often do you do something? From all the time to hardly ever. And then on the y-axis, how much do you love doing this task? Or what like meaning and motivation and fascination do you get from, I hate it, to I love doing this stuff?
I mean, I also ask myself, out of those tasks, what's going to actually propel me to the next point? Because there's a lot of tasks that you can do that they're not going to get you anywhere.
Well, and that probably goes back to like the meaning that you're deriving from those tasks. If you're not getting anything out of it, let's find a way to get that off your plate.
Perfect.
And maybe those tasks still need to be done. Maybe they don't. Maybe they can be eliminated. But if they still need to be done, you could hand that off to someone else.
Perfect.
Or you could augment, or somebody else could use an AI to help. But let's focus on those tasks that you don't like below the line that you do all the time. And by all the time, I mean like at least once a week, 2 or 3 times a month at least. Let's focus on that bucket first. Is there stuff in there that you would love to never do again? For me, that was paperwork and bookkeeping. I hate that stuff.
100%.
Right, so how can I then start to delegate that with 10-80-10? And how can I start to figure out what are my rules for doing this? Because if I can give those rules to a machine, maybe today it's not good enough. I know there's somebody looking at this right now going, yeah, but they're shit. They're not good enough. ChatGPT is not all that. But it will be. This is the worst the AI is ever going to be, is the AI that you're playing with today.
So start getting those processes in. I actually want to make
Start testing it. Start playing with it.
Yep, and I want to make this the last sort of topic. Now that we're talking about agents, AI, this stuff is, some of it's gone over my head, but it's very valuable because I'm going to have to actually rewatch this a few times to really get it. But if we close on this, there's a lot of AI happening. SEO, imagery, ads,
music, video,
everything's AI. And I think there's, for some people, there's a worry about that.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
And we keep on having this in the SEO space. Is SEO dead? We keep on saying every year, SEO is officially dead.
Right.
They keep on saying it now, SEO is dead. I mean, so in your, from your perspective, do you think, or how would you explain to somebody that is concerned about the AI taking over, taking it too far?
I'm not worried about killer robots at all. I'm worried about dumb people using AI to do bad things.
Sure.
But in terms of work, the line I've been using for 7-8 years is, you are not going to get replaced by AI. You're going to get replaced by somebody who knows how to use the AI. And your job is probably not going to be replaced, but your job is consisted of a whole bunch of tasks. Many of those tasks are either going to be replaced or augmented by someone using AI. It's your job to figure out which of those tasks, because the capabilities of all these different AIs is changing by the day at this point.
By the minute.
Ethan Mollick, who's a fantastic AI guy, calls it the jagged frontier.
Yes.
And if you picture yourself in the middle of this sort of, like, imagine one of those old school like castles with a big wall around the outside. That's the frontier of what AI can do. And if the task is inside the castle wall, it can be done by AI. And if it's on the outside, on the other side of the wall, it can't be done yet. But the wall isn't circular. It's not really obvious. And some bits of the wall are invisible. And it's this jagged line. And until you go play with the AI and you experiment and you see, can it do this task, or can it do this piece of this task? Because if it can't today, what most people do is just give up and go, oh, yeah, it's crap.
Yep.
I tried it a year ago. I wrote some poems in the style of Dr. Seuss, and that was about all it could do, so I stopped using it. But what it can do today is mind-blowing compared to what it did a year ago.
Yep.
And unless you're actively playing with it and pushing it and cajoling it and trying different things, you won't know where that wall is. And suddenly, yeah, maybe your job will be gone. Or you can be on the front foot and you can be using it, and you can be the person that understands how to use AI in that role and start to focus on the stuff that you love to do and get rid of all the other stuff.
I think the interesting thing is, whether you're in marketing, whether you're in web, whether you're not, the real point of this, I mean, you can bring it back, is optimizing, automating, and get AI on your team.
Absolutely.
Get it on your team, because at the end of the day, you know, if you're not, you know, trying to understand it, trying to incorporate it in your processes now, somebody else will.
And somebody else will end up either delivering 10 times the work for the same price, or they'll end up being a fraction of the cost. And if you stick your head in the sand and go, oh no, AI is not as good as me, it couldn't possibly do what I do, I'm a special snowflake,
100%.
You're going to end up the dinosaur that still thinks that you should be playing chess the old school way, and that no computer would ever beat you, or Go, or any of the
100%.
other
Well, from a simple point of view, I mean, someone like yourself, I mean, I could have a team of 100 and you could have just yourself on the AI. And if you know how to use the AI, you've won.
Everybody now has access to 1 million interns virtually for free. It's just up to you how you choose to use them, and how you choose to teach them how to do what you do.
Thank you for jumping on. Pleasure. Good to chat.